There is a lot in our system here in the United States when it comes to healthcare that's just broken. Virtually 100% of the medications we consume when we're talking about generic medications are not produced in the United States. Second was the real cost of medication. I found out, wow, these medications are actually very affordable. What's going on? Why is there such a disconnect here with what the patients are being charged?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Disaster Class. I'm Jason Perez.
And I am Wesley Long.
And Wesley Long class is in session. So we have a very special guest with us today. We have Dr. Shawn Rowland, founder and CEO of Jase Medical. Dr. Rowland, welcome to Disaster Class.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. So maybe before we begin, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your experience, and just give us a little background of yourself.
Sure. So I am a board certified family medicine physician. Got into, previous to medicine, I guess previous to med school, I should say, I did search and rescue in Salt Lake County with the sheriff's department there, was an EMT, did, wilderness first aid and was an EMT, did high angle rock rescue, avalanche rescue, dive rescue. So had a lot of great experience kind of in my undergrad years before going into med school and been able to put a lot of that stuff to use now.
That's awesome. And we love it because Wesley and I have an EMS background too, EMT. So love having that connection with you there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So then you went to med school.
Yeah. So med school, and then I did a lot of I had experience in Mexico, all over the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast. Ultimately, I ended up in Utah, which is where I'm from, and started my practice there. Prior to that, I was in residency. I was actually in New Mexico and had some great experience with border health, dealing with, this was when we were just starting to get a lot of the influx of people coming from the South into the country. And so there was a lot of health issues with all of that, that we dealt with, presented some unique challenges, and actually gets into how and why I'm where I am today as the founder of Jase Medical. Really stretches back to my experience there.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So that leads right into like the next question, because we're kind of getting to know you a little bit, getting to understand your career path, some of the things you've done, all types of response. Love that. Dealing with all types of tragedies and issues. Unfortunately, board certified, setting up family practice, getting a ton of experience helping folks in an even greater way because of through education and your experience. Phenomenal. So now let's get into where Jase Medical comes into. So you with all of that experience, you must have identified some specific need, some issue where you're like, hey, that's not being fulfilled, and I'm going to give it a shot because I think I can help. So walk us through what some of that was for you.
Yeah, you're exactly right in that kind of identification process. And there's things even on the horizon here at the company that were things that were kind of in the longer play that we haven't executed on yet that have to do with that direct experience. I'm someone who I feel like there is a lot in our system here in the United States when it comes to healthcare that's just broken. When we look at how insurance companies interact with patients and physicians, and how care is dictated, and the time you're able to spend as a physician with your patient in primary care, and all of that kind of led to, I wanted to structure my practice in a way that fit my values and my ethos, which everything centers on education for me, in having the time to sit down, talk to my patients, like, let's make the decision together. Let's talk about why we're going to do this or not do this, and have your buy-in or help. And it's a real collaborative process. And there just isn't time to do that in a traditional sense right now in our healthcare system, unless you work outside the insurance company and do other things. So kind of with that in the back of your mind, then put yourself in with me in residency. Well, this is pre-pandemic. I'm working in a community hospital down on our southern border. And this is a time where, again, keep that pre-pandemic is key because it's such a paradigm shift in how we view the world has occurred over the last few years. So you've got to take yourself to before that, to the land of good and plenty, right? Where we are here in the US. I'm in a top tier healthcare system. We have what we need when we need it. And like, we're the best, right? So here I am, and I'm in an inpatient service. The pharmacists who are the ones in the hospital, right? The hospital pharmacists, they're coming in and they're telling us, all right, team, today we're actually short of this medication. We have it, but we don't have a lot. So if you're going to use it, we need to know, like, it needs to go through this approval process. This was a very specific, very important antibiotic. It was like our go-to when you're not quite sure what they have, but you need to get something started right away that you know is going to cover everything that you think it could be. And you're telling me that I can't use that necessarily when I need it. That was just the very first like red flag. What is going on?
Wake up call.
Right,
Yeah.
real wake up call. And so that caused me, I started to dig in a little bit and do some research. And I did that for the next year, graduated residency. Now we're getting into the pandemic. The pandemic hits, and now all of a sudden everything's hit the fan, right? We're all there. We can't get toilet paper. We can't
Right.
the world's on fire, right? So now I'm thinking, not only what about the pharmaceutical side of things that I've been learning about? What about the fact that I just learned that virtually 100% of the medications we consume when we're talking about generic medications that are prescribed in the United States account for 90 to 95% of the daily medications that we consume. Of that 90 to 95%, virtually 100% are not produced in the United States, with the vast majority of them coming in one form or another from China, India, and a couple other countries. So finding that out first was just like, wow, I had no idea. And oh, geez, that concerns me. There's a lot of reasons to be concerned there. Now combine that with the pandemic and everything that was going on back east anyway, and now I'm really worried. So understanding the pharmaceutical supply chain in our country was the first kind of, there's something going on here that we are really exposed. Second was the real cost of medications. As a physician, you write a prescription, you give it to your patient, you let them deal with their insurance or whatever, and we're really insulated from the true cost of these medications. You have to make a real effort as a physician to figure out what the meds you're prescribing, what they actually are costing your patients. And
Right.
as I started my own practice and needed to have access directly to these wholesalers and basically the same people that the pharmacies are going to so that I could have them for my practice, I found out, wow, these medications are actually very affordable. What's going on? Why is there such a disconnect here with what the patients are being charged? And so those were the two big things. One, we're on a knife's edge of potential disruption with our supply chain. Two, these meds are
Right.
actually really accessible from a cost perspective. And so here we are. We're going into this first winter of uncertainty with the pandemic, where I was really worried because we had the pandemic, we had flu season, and a lot of unknowns. And I was very nervous for myself, for my family, and for my brand new baby practice and the patients I wanted to do the best I could for, right? And that's where Jase was born. I said, hold on, I've got a clinic full of these meds that I got for pretty cheap. I feel really prepared. I'm good to go, and my family's good to go. My patients are good to go. What about my neighbors? What about my extended family? What about my friends? What about all these people who also are just as exposed and have no option? That's just not. I couldn't live with myself. It was so unsettling. And so that led to another year of research to say, how can I, as a physician, do this at scale? Every physician that you talk to at one point or another has had a patient or someone come to them and say, hey, doc, I'm going on a trip with my wife, or the wife comes in and says, hey, doc, I'm going on a trip, and I always seem to get a UTI when we go away. Could I get some meds for this UTI just in case? And 9 times out of 10, no problem. So the idea was, I want to take that and scale that out to cover where I can get patients medications before they need them with the right amount of education, so that they have them on hand if there is a supply chain, when there is a supply chain disruption, I should say, and we can get into that. There's over 300 medications on the FDA shortage list right now, and it grows longer every day. So when that supply chain issue becomes something that personally affects you, or you're in an area where it's just too hard to get healthcare because you're traveling, it's a foreign country, or it's a blizzard back east where you can't even get out of your house for 2 or 3 days, right? You need to have these medications on hand. So that was the beginning of Jase Medical. I identified 5 medications that would cover the widest range of the most likely things you encounter when you need antibiotics: UTIs, sinus infections, pneumonia, skin infections, the real common things. But they're common, but they can also be deadly if they're left untreated.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other side of this was, what were the most deadly things that in the event of a true disaster, we're talking bioterror, where everyone in that area needs to be prophylactically taking an antibiotic to not succumb to this 100% fatal bioterror agent. And so that was part of what was included in that initial kit. From there, we've grown out to include antivirals, antifungals, anything that you might need in an emergency situation that you don't take on a daily basis. And then we also added our Jase Daily service. This is an interesting one that I'd love to talk more about, because this is for those folks who take, high blood pressure, diabetes, thyroid, anxiety, depression, whatever that condition is that you need to take medications every day for. We provide a year's supply of that medication so that you have that backup, so that when that disruption occurs, when that disaster occurs, when you're in Maui and your neighborhood just caught on fire and you can't access your medications, your pharmacist or your doctor, you've got them on hand. And that it's a unique service. We're the only ones out there that are doing it. It's complex. There's a lot of moving pieces in the background to make that work. And we're continuing to add new things every day. That's a mouthful, but that's Jase.
Yeah.
That's how we get there.
Awesome.
Oh, that's all? Oh, okay. That's what you've been tinkering with. Oh, okay, nice. No, listen, first of all, doctor, thank you so much for breaking that down in terminology that is so relevant to each and every one of us on a daily basis, right? So, Jason, I think I want to talk about this real quick, and you might want to backfill some of this. I love throwing Jason curveballs. It's what I love doing.
Curveballs.
He probably loves
I love it. So Jason, we've got our CEP, and we address this.
Great.
So maybe you can talk to Dr. Rowland about how we address it, what we've talked about, because ultimately, we at Instinct Ready found Jase Medical to fill a specific need with people that have been asking us some questions. So we found you guys. We became a reseller. We just loved the mission as a company. Like, we saw you guys, we picked you off the shelf and was like, wow, this is a really cool thing. And because of our involvement with CEP, it's a very prevalent thing that we've been dealing with. So Jason, maybe a little bit of background on CEP, and so that the doctor understands kind of where and how we found them.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things, CEP is we actually, we're education focused also. And that's actually where Wesley and I really started before we got into disaster class and Instinct Ready and all these things we're doing. We really started on the community education platform, because we recognize that there's a lot of things out there that just people don't know. And so what we did, we developed what we call our community emergency planning course. And it walks through community members, individuals, households, families, basic steps on how to prepare for disaster, from knowing how to identify their risks to how to put together a family emergency action plan, and then putting together a disaster kit, whether at their house or in a to-go bag if they need to evacuate. And so we cover everything from water, food, clothing, shelter, communication, navigation, health. And so one of the big things is that we would talk about in our course was medications, and how do you have a supply of medications you're on hand for disaster. And in doing some research, then we found that even different states have even different laws that govern like how much of an advanced supply patients can even get. And so that's kind of where we started at with the education component, just doing all this research, trying to find what resources are at hand, and then being able to give it to those that take the class.
Yeah. So for an instance, doctor, one of the questions that were asked us, and we try to have the same feel. It's a 3-hour curriculum that we developed with a board certified school teacher that helped us develop the curriculum into a 3-hour program that we had for our folks. And part of that is Q&A. It's just discussion based. And we asked them, yeah, ask us some questions, because we've been doing this for 5 to 10 years now. So we've heard quite a few questions. We haven't heard everything, but we've heard quite a few questions, and we gained a little experience. But one of the questions I came across was one I hadn't been hit with before, and it was a woman who suffers from diabetes, and they need insulin. And as you know, insulin needs to be kept cold. So, like, because we administer it in the field, whatever, like, we understand that. So she was like, how am I going to keep my insulin cold for 72 hours if I've got no refrigeration? And I was like, great question, right? These are the levels of questions that's coming from our community engagement, and we love it. So we didn't have a great answer, but the best answer I could find was, I researched just real briefly, and I found a company that was creating a small insulated freeze pack for dog insulin. It was for pets. It was designed to, you throw it in keep it in your freezer, you pull it out, and it's insulated, and it'll keep it cold for 72 or more hours. And I was just like, so I found that, I sent her the information. I'm like, hey, you obviously could retrofit that and put it with human insulin, because the syringe will still fit. You'll be good to go. But these are the types of questions that everyday people are literally dealing with. So what you guys are doing at Jase Medical is 100% spot on for the needs that we have as a community right now.
Well, when I mean, you mentioned, it's funny to hear anyone who's in the space will rattle off that list of food, water, shelter, clothing, and I think the reason that, because in that probably, and you could argue maybe even before some of the others, the not medication, but that medical side of things should be so much higher on the list, because for some people, like a diabetic with insulin, it's probably number one on the list, maybe right after food or water. 100%. And so, but there hasn't been. It's individualized, so it's hard to address for everybody, because it's got to be individualized to their situation. And then the solutions have been so lacking in so many for so long, right? And so there's not a lot to talk about other than here's all the problems. I can't really tell you how to fix them. And so yes, the ability to now interject this service and some answers for people who have not had answers for so long is something that I'm very proud of and want to continue to build off of, and really to give people to put part of the lexicon, right? So it's part of that list.
It's absolutely huge. So in hearing you talk about the discovery of the problem, and then the discovery of your solution to those problems, it really resonated with what Jason and I created with Instinct Ready. We have 3 words that we use. That's kind of our moniker: educate, prepare, equip. Literally, I hear you doing the same exact process through Jase Medical. You're trying to get the education out there so people understand what's going on. And then you want to prepare them for when something goes wrong. And then you've taken it that next step further. How can we equip you with the stuff you're going to need to survive? So it's for us at Instinct Ready, that's a 3-step process: educate, prepare, equip. Like that's exactly, feel free to use it in your space. You know, we're not competitors. But really, because to us, that's what boils down. It boils down to exactly what we do, who we are, and what we represent. When you use that word, ethos, right? What our moral values are, what our compass is, that's who we are. That's in our DNA. And I see you guys are made of the same exact stuff. So it's just really nice to have an interchange with individuals like that have that same type of vision and go about creating creative solutions with the same value set, right? It's not about, oh, it's a business, I'm trying to make X, right? It's not. We just want to help people, and with our unique experience through the lens that we have, we see a very specific way to move forward and do that in one small area. It's not the end all be all, not solving all your problems, but this, because of our experience, I can help you with this.
Yeah,
and that's huge.
It's such a refreshing, it's not a widget, and I'm not a salesman, and it's kind of for better or for worse, I'm the spokesman of this company. Because I tell my marketing guys, like, hey guys, I'm not going to go out there and like schlep this, but at the same time, I'm so passionate, truly passionate, have seen and experienced this stuff firsthand, and it's not fear mongering. I'm out there shouting on the rooftops to educate people. And that's at the end of the day, I'm out, and I've said that before in other interviews where, hey, if you want to go to your doc and you want to say, hey doc, can I get these 220 pills for some future need that I might never have. And if he says yes and he gives you those prescriptions, you want to go shop, do that. Please do that. Everyone
Do it.
needs to do that. And all we've done is try to make it as easy as we could so that it
Yeah.
can get to everybody.
Absolutely.
But to your point of like, yeah, it's a different business to be in. And I say business in quotations because
Yeah.
this is, it's so necessary and it's truly out there. I mean, the testimonials that we get from patients it's such a, it just really drives home how important it is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I love that part of the business. That's why I went into medicine. I love being able to perpetuate that.
So,
Love
yeah, that's awesome. So a couple things I want to ask. So one, can you tell us a little bit more about the product offerings that you
Yes.
have, like a little bit more how Jase works? And then you mentioned testimonials too. I would love to hear success stories, how people have found it.
Great. So yeah, I talked about kind of how Jase came to be, but one of the other parts of why it came to, because the other question is, well, how come this hasn't been done before?
Yeah.
I would say there's various reasons to it, but one of the big ones to highlight is, in business, timing is everything. The pandemic, the adoption of telemedicine that was really it was kind of put into fast forward or hyperdrive, I should say, with the pandemic, not only from the regulatory standpoint where states and the federal government made it a lot easier for this to be a viable means of delivering healthcare, but also the general public was much more, now they were also used to it and saying, yes, this is a way that I want to interact with my doctor, and saw the benefits. And so that was because it's a big part of how Jase works. And so to answer your question, the way this is built is you go onto the website. It's divided right now into two main categories: the emergency medications, that's those 5 antibiotics plus all the add-ons, and then there's the daily medications for people with chronic conditions. So you go through, you choose which one you want. You go through an encounter, which is basically, again, we are not designed to take over as your primary care physician. That's not the intent here. But what we can do is look at a very focused area and say, we're going to help you accomplish this focused goal. And because of that, I don't need to know I don't need to know your surgical history. I don't need to know if your mom had cancer. I don't need to know, a lot of these things. I just need to know some pretty basic things to make sure that at the end of the day, what the physician prescribes is safe and appropriate for you and is accompanied by the proper education. And if that's the case, then that means I can build this encounter such that it's only going to take you 5 minutes to go through this. You fill it out, it's 5 minutes, answer these questions. That information gets transmitted to the doctor who reviews it. Depending on the state you live in, they'll reach out and contact you directly. Sometimes they don't even have to do that. If they have a question, they might contact you directly, but you're not having to set up an appointment and wait and coordinate with the doctor. That information, assuming everything looks good and they approve the prescription, it gets transmitted to one of our partner pharmacies. We've pre-negotiated all of this ahead of time because of the volume we do, and because this, they can repeat this relatively easily. We can get great rates. And so that means that they get the prescription, they package it all together with our unique educational component, and then they ship that to your door. The whole process, say 5-10 minutes on the site, and then you wait for those medications to arrive. You should have those medications on your door anywhere from 2 days to a week, I'd say at the most. And so that's the whole process. That's how Jase works on the website.
Beautiful.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yep.
As
Streamlined.
It's streamlined. The goal was, let's make this as convenient and as affordable as possible. And like I say, if you want to wait 4 or 5 weeks for that appointment with your doc, you want to explain what you're trying to do, you're going to get those medications. You're then going to have to go shop them at a retail pharmacy, figuring out which ones has the best rates. Again, all of this is out of pocket. I should mention it's also out of pocket on our website. This is not something that insurance covers yet. They're not in the business of covering for something you might not ever need.
Right.
And so this is but because of that, we knew we needed to make this as cheap as we could and as affordable as we could, while also allowing us to further this mission. And so that's the balance there for the process. Now, it's turned out, after we've done this for a few years now, it was interesting because I went to it initially, it was the pandemic. It was really a doomsday thing. Like when things really go wrong, I want to be prepared, right? But of course, as time's gone on now, we've seen that there are so many other real reasons why people need this service, and a couple of them I kind of threw out as I was talking earlier about, you know, if you were in a blizzard, for example, and we had people a few winters ago, you know, this was in, I don't know if it was New Jersey, I'm now forgetting, I want to say it was New Jersey, had a horrible blizzard. People really couldn't leave their house for days. Emergency services couldn't get in, let alone could you get to a hospital. You couldn't pick up meds,
Yep.
any of that. And we had people writing in who were in dire straits with bad infections and had their Jase case. A really common one that I also didn't anticipate was just your mom. It's a weekend. You're in an area where there's a lot of areas in the country that don't have 24-hour pharmacies, and you or your child is sick. If you're lucky enough to, you can jump online and get a telemedicine appointment. There's all kinds. That's out there. But then what do you do once they prescribe something? How do you get your med?
Exactly.
When it's the middle of the night, right?
Mhm.
So if you can combine this kind of a thing with, again, education is really important, because in my mind, just like you have Tylenol and ibuprofen in your medicine cabinet, there's certain antibiotics that everybody should have. And the fear
Yep.
has always been, well, then people are going to use them inappropriately, and it's going to lead, and because antibiotics, they're not without their side effects, not without their potential harms. And that's why they need to be prescribed, so that you can have that education with the physician. It's done appropriately. But why is there not a way that we can do this ahead of time, so that when you are sick, you've
Preemptively.
already had that education, you already know if this is the right med to take. And now it doesn't mean it's not that way for every disease. You
Right.
know,
Right. Right.
there's a certain focus here that we've chosen. But if it's the right use case, then absolutely everybody should have access to this. And then add on top of that the fact that this shortage list is growing, that all these meds come from a country that we maybe don't always have the best relationships with, and we're going to depend on them for our bioterror antidotes. It just doesn't
Right.
work. So yeah, so as far
That's real world. That's real world issues that you're addressing. Like, that's
yeah,
real.
and then maybe just the tease there is, in a true disaster scenario, this was something that, God, it was such a validation of everything we were doing, but it was also really heartbreaking. I went over I live actually in Hawaii, and I was really close to the Maui fires, and got outfitted with a search and rescue group, and we got boots on the ground there within 24 hours. And it was just a true large scale disaster, right? And seeing, and my role during that disaster was I was heading up really the coordination of care. This was before FEMA was there. There was the
Right.
National Guard was there, but they were dealing with they weren't dealing with all the affected people around the fire. They were dealing with the fire directly. But you had a whole community of people who were cut off, who didn't have power, didn't have water, didn't have basic services, and it was and so my role became kind of coordinating the care amongst this whole community, and getting these clinics set up, coordinate, because there was a lot of people who wanted to help. Pharmacists were coming in with medications, doctors wanted to help, needed to be coordinated. And what we ended up having was lines of people who, they had their food, they had their water, because those, honestly, that the island was just inundated with amazing support from the mainland, from other islands. So those basic needs were met pretty quickly, thankfully. But we get to those individual needs, and now things started to break down, and medications were those individual needs. So there were lines of people in our clinic tents not needing first aid help, some of them here and there, but they all were there trying to get their blood pressure medications, their seizure medications, things that were really important for these people, and were cut off from it. And so here I was, and I wasn't there to push Jase. I was there as a physician. I never mentioned Jase. But I was thinking, like, oh my gosh, if I could have just gotten to these people a week earlier, like thousands of people wouldn't be going through this. And this is so much, it was such an inspiration that I need to get the word out. This was avoidable. And so things like this opportunity, I rarely turn down an opportunity I'm running this company. I mean, we're growing like crazy, but if I have an opportunity to sit down on any kind of a platform to help get the word out, I feel so passionately about it. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many reasons why I love this.
Yeah, I know, right? Me too.
But like, just, and you know, talk about prescription shortages and a lot of the issues that you mentioned. From my perspective, as someone who was a responder, I worked through COVID. I worked in New York City during COVID, um, and just even without pandemic aside, like a busy day, those hospitals just get so overrun. And it's just there's so much demand on the responders. And now post pandemic, we're still dealing with staffing shortages and for EMS and hospitals. So
Overrun
like
healthcare system. It doesn't take much to trip
it
that.
doesn't take much. It
At
really
all.
doesn't. And so but a lot of the emergency rooms are overrun with people that aren't critical. They're not super sick, and probably they could be fixing themselves at home if they had a Jase kit. So, I think I think it's incredible. I think what you guys are doing is awesome. I think it definitely solves a huge problem.
Feels a need. Feels an absolute need.
Feels a real
100%.
need. You know, so I love it. Love it. Where can people go to keep in touch with you, to
Yeah.
social media accounts, website?
Yeah, so everything really through our we're on all the social media accounts. It's Jase Medical. You can also go to the website. We were able to finally get Jase. It's jase.com. So you can go to
Nice.
jase.com. You can go to the patient education and see a lot of there's a lot of educational stuff there. We've got our customer support. I'll put up against anybody. So answers at Jase Medical for any questions. If it's something like something that's clinically related, it'll get forwarded to. We've got on-staff physicians and PAs to answer those questions. But if it's a general question just about the process, we've got. I'm fully confident in our ability to handle any of those questions. So that's where I would point people to, and I guess really just that message is this is one. I'll tell you the challenge of this business has been, in some sense, people might argue you're kind of selling insurance, something that you might never need. And how do you get people to take that action, to spend money on something that they believe they might never need? And I guess the only thing I'd say is, as all of those use cases that we laid out, it really isn't. This is not a question of if you're going to need these things. It's when. And in fact, that became one of the things we didn't anticipate even needing to really deal with. And that was people coming back saying, I used my stuff, I need a refill. And because of all these, because right, it wasn't a disaster, there wasn't an end of the world disaster, but their life certainly, that weekend, the travel, that whatever it is, where they ended up needing to use one of those meds, it's not if, it's when. And I just couldn't emphasize that more. And so that's where we are at Jase, where we've got some fun, exciting things coming around in the next few weeks and months. I'll tease that what you mentioned insulin and the difficulties there. We're working on a fun little announcement there, with some other stuff in the works, but really just trying to
Nice.
continue our mission. Really, at the end of the day, our mission is to empower people to be better prepared medically. Medical preparedness is huge. And so we started with antibiotics. We went to the daily meds. We're building off into other things, whether that's insulin, whether that's for stuff for children, and on and on. It's a heavy lift, but we're loving it, and it's opportunities like these that help us spread the word.
Man, I appreciate that so much. Like, and we get it, right? Like, a lot of what we kind of started with our company Instinct Ready was go bags, and it's the same thing. How do you convince someone to buy something that we hope you'll never need? Like, we hope you'll never need to use a go bag. Like, that's our sincere hope, that you never go through a situation where your life depends on your go bag. But here we are. And then we found some weird things that happened during COVID as well for us. From day one, we had always put in an N95 mask and a roll of toilet paper. Like, literally from day one, we had done that in our kit. So we got people writing in like, oh, if you bought a bag from us, you already have an N95 mask. They're like, what? Like, that's in your kit. You actually already have a roll of toilet paper. That's in your kit if you bought one from us. So we totally understand. And I see a lot of applications. Jason and I are going to talk quite a bit offline about this for a couple of things. One, once you guys start having your fun little announcements, we'd love to get you back to reignite your message through our platform, because we love everything you guys stand for. So that's one thing we're going to keep tabs on your organization for. We love your product, and we are going to do even more of a concerted effort because of some of the things you mentioned works really well with our kids.
Yeah.
For emergencies and for travel is what I picked up that are huge components that we will definitely be a force multiplier and amplify that through our platform for you guys, because you are the only solution when it comes to those two things that fit perfectly in line with our vision and our mission. So we're going to stay connected with you guys. We absolutely love everything you're about. We love where you've come from. We love what you're doing, and we can't wait to see what you guys do even more in the future.
In the meantime, we are going to put a link in the description where people can go and you can get actually $10 off at Jase. So if you go to, is it jase.com now?
Yeah. You
So
can
go to
jase.com, but jase.com, JASE.
JASE.com. And if you use promo code Instinct Ready, you can get $10 off there. So we'll put the link in the description. Okay, everyone. So we're going to pause here with our conversation with Dr. Rowland, and we're going to pick it up on next episode of Disaster Class. But as always, there is homework. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave us that 5-star rating, give us that thumbs up, and tell us about something that you learned or appreciated from this episode. As always, if you have a question, a preparedness tip, a disaster story to share, send us an email at disasterclass@instinctready.com. And as always, doing so will put you in the running to be featured on the show and win some cool prizes. So as always, thank you for listening to Disaster Class. Stay educated, stay prepared, stay equipped, and we'll see you next time.